Acts today, but probably will next Sunday, no later than next Sunday. I have a hard time believing we're just running out of Scripture. I mean, you hit the end, right? It stops. What an amazing story, though. Let's pick up where we left off. And I think I left myself a handy-dandy little yellow arrow so that we can see where we left off. There we are. Okay. Now, you'll remember the ship is being tossed by the storm. And we read this passage starting in Acts 27, verse 39. We're going to do a little memory test today. I think you're going to do really well because this is things that we just talked about last week. But when day came, what did the sailors see? Land. Land. What did they plan to do? Do you remember? Run it aground on the sandy beach. Sounds like, they were hoping for a soft landing. That was the plan. What did they do to the ship to accomplish this? So they cast off the anchors, they loosened the rudders, and didn't they did something with the foresail, right? Yes, hoisting the, verse 40, hoisting the foresail to the wind, they made for the beach. So they, they loosened the ropes to the rudders. They're saying, we're just going to go with the wind. They cut loose the anchors. We're not going to use the anchors anymore. We just want to make it to the beach. Head for the beach. That's what they're going for. Did they reach the beach? They did not reach the beach. And we looked at some of these pictures of the coastal areas around Malta and how rocky these were, and a lot of reefs and things like that came out from the shoreline. So they ran aground on some rocks. What was happening to the ship? It was just happily sitting there on the rocks. What was happening? Yes. So Sharon tells us, as Scripture says, the wind or the ship was being busted up by, it actually says by the waves, by the surf, and the stern was being broken up by the surf. So the stern is going to be a pretty sturdy part of the ship. That wind, that surf is coming so powerfully that it's breaking up the timbers, breaking up the ship. It's just coming apart. And we learned something in other passages in the New Testament. I think I just lost my battery. It's interesting how it just goes, right? So I'll speak. There. Is it still on? Okay. I thought I lost it for a second. So with regards to Roman soldiers, when they are given a charge and they fail in their charge, prisoner escapes, something happens. And whatever it is they're guarding gets away or whatever, what happens to the Roman soldier? Well, they're killed anyway. I don't know if they're actually beheaded. That sounds pretty dramatic. Maybe they are. I don't know. But we know that they're killed, and there's examples of this in the New Testament where a Roman soldier, when they failed at their duty, they were killed. It's interesting. I'm going to chase a rabbit for just a second about soldier types. So why didn't that happen with the soldiers that were guarding Jesus' tomb? Were those Roman soldiers? Probably not. They were probably temple guards, right? And we read in the incident of the garden that there's involvement of the temple guards earlier in that narrative. So the fact that they were told by the authorities, listen, just tell people the disciples came and took the body away, and made up this story instead of killing them, it seems pretty apparent that these were likely temple guards guarding Jesus' tomb rather than Roman guards. So these Roman guards, flash forward now, these Roman guards that are guarding the prisoners on this ship. The ship's breaking up. If you're the guard and it looks like the soldiers are going to swim away, what are you going to do to save your own life? You're probably going to kill the soldiers, right? Because you can't let them escape. That's just kind of understood. But how does Julius intervene? This centurion, how does he intervene here?
Save Paul.
Paul and Julius have kind of built this relationship, haven't they? Which I find interesting. Not surprising, but interesting. And Julius wants to save him. Whether or not it's based on relationship or the fact that his charge is to deliver him to Caesar and he's determined to do that, I'm not sure what the reason is, but Julius wants to save Paul, and he gives the order what? What does he tell everybody to do? Swim for it. Make for the beach. Go jump overboard, get out in the water, swim for the beach. If you need something, grab a plank or something else. That actually says that, doesn't it? 44, and the rest on planks or pieces of the ship. How many people made it safely to shore? Every last one of them. Which is interesting, because if we look in verse 22 of Acts, a little earlier, Paul actually tells them, not one of you is going to be lost. So this is a fulfillment of what Paul told them that God had revealed to him, that not one of them was going to be lost. So they all made it to the shore. What a tense moment.
Just that whole voyage was a terror
Oh,
to people. I mean,
yeah.
just terrified every minute of it.
Yes.
I'd never be on a ship ever again.
Yeah. I don't know, do we have cruisers here? Anybody cruise? I know some people like to cruise. There's a cruiser. I've never been a cruiser. I've been on a ship a couple of times. Didn't particularly enjoy it. Not sure I'm going to go back. But yeah, this thing was lost. How long were they at sea in this storm? Do you remember? 2 weeks. 2 weeks at least, right? Verse 33, as day was about to dawn, Paul urged them to take some food, saying, today is the 14th day that you've continued in suspense and without food, having taken nothing. So at least 2 weeks, maybe a little longer when you count the extra days that they ran aground. This is Smith's Bay in Malta. It's a possible site of Paul's shipwreck. They don't seem to really know where exactly it took place, where they wrecked, but all these shorelines along here look pretty rough. This is actually called St. Paul's Bay, near where the traditional site is, where they think it might have wrecked. Looks pretty rough, doesn't it? You could easily see something running aground on those reefs and those rocks. Okay, on to lesson 51, and we are in Acts, the first 10 verses of Acts 28. And let's just look at this map again for a second. I really enjoy this map. And I'm going to turn and use the pointer up here. I don't know why I can't remember that. So notice the blue arrows here. That was, what kind of a ship do we know? Kind of a coastal trader, something that moved along and moved from port to port, likely a smaller ship. So it sailed along here. We read earlier in Acts that in 27 that they get a new ship, an Alexandria ship that's a cargo ship here at Myra. They sail to Cnidus, and they come around. The wind's starting to get rough. They go off Salmone, and they make it here. They're in Fair Havens for a short period of time, and they wanted to get to, where did they want to winter? You remember? They were trying to get to Phoenix. So they were trying to get to Phoenix, but this nor'easter blew through here, and blew them down. They were afraid of running aground down here in these huge sandbars in what they call the Syrtis. And they are tossed and essentially lost at sea, as it indicates here, until they shipwreck here on the island of Malta. So two ships so far that they had used in their travels. Okay, well, let's pick it up.
And when you look at that map, I mean, if you're out there, I mean, that's a huge section of the ocean.
Yes.
You think it's just coincidence that they blew up on Malta, that one
The
little
little,
tiny
little dinky island,
spot
yeah.
right there after they
Yeah.
that vast ocean, and all of a sudden, they see Malta? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that was another part of clearly God's plan.
Yes. Yes. And that they were not blown down here, even given the fact that this was a nor'easter, they managed to get up to Malta. So, yeah, God had a plan, and that's what happened. Okay, let's read the first 6 verses of 28. After we were brought safely through, we then learned that the island was called Malta. The native people showed us unusual kindness, for they kindled a fire and welcomed us all because it had begun to rain and was cold. When Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and put them on the fire, a viper came out because of the heat and fastened on his hand. When the native people saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "Well, no doubt this man is a murderer. Though he has escaped from the sea, justice has not allowed him to live." He, however, shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. They were waiting for him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But when they had waited a long time and saw no misfortune come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. Okay, so the name of this island still exists today. It's still out there. We talked a little bit last week about a guy that used to work at the hospital that was from Malta. Pretty interesting fellow. What were the people of the island like? And what did they do for Paul and these folks? Were these like really violent and aggressive natives? They were friendly folks, right? See a bunch of people washed up on the beach. What time of year is this roughly? Do you remember? We looked at the Day of Atonement was past. So what time of year is it roughly? Maybe late October, early November, something like that. It's likely cold. Of course, they're all completely dry. I mean, they're soaked to the skin, and they've been out there in the ocean. They come in, it's blowing, it's cold, and these islanders, whoever they were, built a fire for them and tried to warm them up. So what happened to Paul is he was helping stoke the fire. A snake lit into him. Yeah. So his fangs apparently were in him enough. I mean, you can just picture this, right? It's almost like that scene that I saw on TV the other day of Secretary Kennedy. Not secretary, head of HHS. What's his title? Secretary Kennedy. Yeah. You see him, I don't know if you saw him wrangling snakes on TV the other day, and he got bit. And the snake was just flailing like that, and it's hanging on Paul, and the natives are thinking what? Well, what'd they first think? This has got to be a really bad guy because he survived the wreck, and yet justice has found him another way. He's about to die from a snake bite. And they're all watching him, expecting him to seize up or fall down or something, and what happens to Paul? Absolutely nothing happens to Paul. He just continues on, right? And so then they think, what about him? They think he's a god. So they kind of went from one extreme to the other. That kind of changed their perspective of Paul and what they thought of him. I'm sure it changed, and we're going to see this kind of unfold, Paul's impact on the people of this island. as we get into the story. So I want to share this next video from Dr. Manner with you, Life Among the People. If it's going to play, let's see. Well, we had this problem once before. Cyrus, can you see if that video will play? Is there any way for you to initiate that video? When you click on it, does anything interesting happen? No? Well, I owe you a video again. I'm not sure why that's not working. So one of the things that Dr. Manner points out, and I'll paraphrase portions of his video, is that the thing about the snake is one of the things that people say makes the Bible false, because apparently there's no snakes, at least poisonous snakes, in Malta, or there weren't several years ago. And this led scholars to believe that, oh, this is just a made-up story, there's no poisonous snakes. But of course, what snakes were indigenous 2,000 years ago could be completely different from what snakes are there now. And in fact, I'll go forward here. This is the cat snake that's found on Malta. There's 4 different kinds of snakes on Malta. This is the only poisonous one, and its fangs are way back in its jaw. The venom is not really dangerous to humans, and it's not really considered a threat. So there are snakes on Malta, and if nothing else, this proves that what snakes are on Malta changes over the decades and the centuries. There apparently was a viper. Luke is so accurate in everything else that he records, it's hard to believe that he would miss on this particular point. It could have come off of the ship, and in fact, the information that I read about the indigenous snakes now say that they're not really indigenous. A lot of them came over on ships during World War I. When ships docked there and those snakes were on board, the snakes made it over and have grown and multiplied on Malta since then. So snake population is not really a basis for believing or not believing in the accuracy of the Bible. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, let's read on. Let me show you these pictures first before we actually get to the text. So this is a 17th century chapel commemorating the location where Paul and Publius met. We'll read about Publius here in just a minute as we get into the text. This is a statue of Paul at a church, the Church of St. Paul's Shipwreck in Veleta, Malta. That's apparently what it's called, the Church of St. Paul's Shipwreck. Obviously, they still hold Paul in high regard in some circles in Malta. So that's still the case. So let's pick it up in verse 7 and read on. Now in the neighborhood of that place were lands belonging to the chief man of the island named Publius, who received us and entertained us hospitably for 3 days. It happened that the father of Publius lay sick with fever and dysentery. And Paul visited him and prayed, and putting his hands on him, healed him. And when this had taken place, the rest of the people on the island who had diseases also came and were cured. They also honored us greatly. And when we were about to sail, they put on board whatever we needed. Interesting story. So what was the name of the chief man of the island? Publius. And what relation of his was sick? His father was sick, had fever and dysentery. What did Paul do for him? He had 2 things, right? He prayed for him, and he laid his hands on him, and he's healed. What happened after that? In verse 9. All this, the word's going to get out, right? This man just healed Publius' father from dysentery and his fever. Quick, go get other sick people and bring them here, because this man can heal them. So Paul had a huge impact on the island. How did the group regard them at that point from verse 10? Honored them greatly, it says, yes. So had a very high regard for this group, and especially Paul, for what he had done, not only for Publius' father, but for others that were brought and healed. So when they get ready to sail, oops, I don't have that one. Let me just ask, when they get ready to sail, how does this affect how the ship's provisioned? They gave them anything they needed for the trip, right? So they didn't have to go out and hunt for food or supplies for the journey. The native people there on Malta, out of gratitude and honoring them, made sure they had every provision they needed for the trip. Okay. Well, that was a short lesson. So we're on to 52. 52 is, sadly, the last lesson in the book of Acts. I don't think we're going to quite get through it today, but such an exciting story. Okay, we're familiar with the map. I'm not going to dwell on the map again, other than just to point out where they're going next, right? So they're here on Malta. We'll read about how they go to Syracuse, Rhegium, Puteoli, and then they start heading up towards Rome, and we'll see what happens at the Forum of Appius and this area called Three Taverns as we get into the text. So let's see if this video will play. This one's called Via Appia by Dr. Manner. And it doesn't play. I don't understand why these don't play. Well, I owe you 2 videos. So we'll figure out the technical issues with that next week and see if we can get these to play. I'm not sure I understand what's going on with these videos. So here's a map. This is a little bit better map, a closer map of what's going on. So we'll read about Puteoli, which is right there, this harbor area, just on the edge of this map. And they travel along and come to this place called the Forum of Appius, this area called Three Taverns. One of the things that Dr. Manner points out is tavern doesn't mean a bar like we would think of it today. It was a place where people rested when they traveled. There were accommodations, you could get a meal, that sort of thing. There was apparently 3 roads that came that had a junction in this area, and I'll show you a picture of the Three Taverns area here in a minute. Also, there's a marshy area here that we'll look at that was kind of known. One of the notes I read said it was malaria infested. So it was so marshy that the mosquito population was high. There was a lot of malaria. And they actually built a canal through that area for navigation and for irrigation. And that has since been, that whole marshy area has been drained and is used for agricultural land today. So let's look at some of these images. Here's the shoreline of Syracuse that we'll talk about here in a minute when we get into the text. Here's the theater at Syracuse. This was interesting. So the diameter there is 444 feet, and there was, at one time, they've been able to identify 67 rows of seats. So I don't know if you got a ticket and said, 58, section E, seat 23. I don't know if they had tickets like that or not. I don't know how you found your seat in something like this, or if they just said open seating, whatever it was, but it's a really large theater at Syracuse. This is the coastline at Rhegium, which we'll read about. Here's the shoreline east of Puteoli, which is that harbor. And here's the harbor of Puteoli today. Apparently it's still growing because you can see construction cranes over here on the horizon. So still a growing area. One of the things that Dr. Manner points out in the video is mile markers. The Romans were pretty methodical about putting up mile markers on their major roads. And this is mile marker 43 of the Appian Way, near the Forum of Appius. And I could make out part of this, right? So 43, is that it right there? So they actually had mile markers. I don't know what you would do with that. I guess it would help you plan your trip and let you know how far you had traveled. And if somebody said you need to stop at the hotel there at mile marker 45, you would know kind of what you were doing. But their navigation was kind of sophisticated for.
Looks like a little guy running on the bottom.
It does kind of, doesn't it?
Guy running around.
Yeah. This is some of the paving stones, some of the original paving stones on the Appian Way near the Forum of Appius. It's incredible that that road surface would still be there after this many years. They knew how to build roads, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's all traveling with when he leaves Malta?
So it's with, that's a good question. Luke's with him apparently, and I'm not sure who else. But there are some others apparently. When we get into some of his prison letters, he identifies some of the people that are with him, and that's probably the best place to look would be to go to the prison letters. 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus at least, and look to see who he identifies is with him. This is a modern hotel near the Forum of Appius. Some Bibles will say the Market of Appius, and you can see that canal there through the Pontine Marshes. That has since been drained, and that's agricultural land now. This is the area of Three Taverns. This is beautiful, isn't it? And actually, if we go back, I should have pointed this out. Let me zoom back here. So you'll notice the Via Appia goes along here, and here's this Three Taverns area, and you'll notice to the northeast here, and the north and the east are these mountains. And I love that this picture captures those mountains. So you can see, this is the area that they would have traveled with the mountains. Just absolutely stunning scenery, really beautiful. This is Via Appia as you approach Rome. So this is what the kind of area that they would have seen. And you can see that road surface. It's remarkable how durable it has been. Okay, let's pick it up in 11. I don't think I missed anything, but let's pick it up in 11. After 3 months, we set sail. No, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. On what are we needed? Yep, that's where I am, 11. After 3 months, we set sail in a ship that had wintered in the island, a ship of Alexandria, with the twin gods as a figurehead. Putting in at Syracuse, we stayed there for 3 days, and from there we made a circuit and arrived at Rhegium. After 1 day, a south wind sprang up, and on the 2nd day, we came to Puteoli. There we found brothers and were invited to stay with them for 7 days. And so we came to Rome, and the brothers there, when they had heard about us, came as far as the Forum of Appius and Three Taverns to meet us. On seeing them, let me turn the page here. On seeing them, Paul thanked God and took courage. And when we came into Rome, Paul was allowed to stay by himself with a soldier who guarded him. Okay, I hope I didn't get my slides mixed up here. So it feels like I did. Let me go back. Well, let's pick it up at 11 then. So how long are they in Malta and before they go on? So they're there 3 months, so they kind of get through the winter, right? In fact, it actually says, had wintered in the island. Where'd the ship come from that they were getting on? It's another Alexandrian ship. And we know that those ships came from the northern coast of Africa, kind of made the circuit counterclockwise through the Mediterranean for trade, and they get on one of these ships. It says the twin gods as figureheads. So do you know who these twin gods were? Castor and Pollux, that's right. So these were the twin gods. One was considered immortal by their mythology. One was considered mortal. They had different fathers with the same mother, which is kind of weird from a mythological perspective. I guess it works for them. They're probably most noted today because they're the ones that comprise the constellation Gemini. So if you're into star watching and stargazing and looking at constellations, you'll see them there. What does this say about the belief system of those that at least owned the ship? Probably pagan, not really from a Christian perspective. And I think this is just another one of those places where we see Jesus, the Christ, and what he brings to us and what the pagan world was able to accomplish. And really the pagan world completely fails in this last part of Acts, and we see God working through Paul and making some amazing things happening. So they put in at Syracuse. How long did they stay at Syracuse there in verse 12? 3 days. And from there they went to Rhegium. It says they made a circuit. Does anybody have another word other than circuit in that verse? Verse 13. South wind came up, yeah. It says that there at the end of 15, yeah. That word circuit means, I looked at the Greek word for that, and it's a little bit confusing to look at, but it kind of means to take away, kind of like to take away with a plan. So it was like an established, circuit's probably as good a word as any there. It was a course that they were going to follow, so they came to Rhegium. Then, as Kim pointed out, the south wind sprang up, and where'd they end up on the second day? Puteoli. So they finally make it to Italy. After all this time, they finally make it to Italy, and set in at Puteoli. What did they, or who did they find at Puteoli? They found some brothers. So somehow they encounter these brothers in Puteoli. Now, I don't know if the word got out that Paul was headed to Rome, and somebody sent a letter that was carried by hand, during the winter time, and it made it to Rome, and people were waiting for Paul to arrive. That could have happened. We saw when we studied the book of Ephesus, some of the paving stones would actually have like hidden symbols in the paving stones where Christians met. So maybe they saw Paul and his group, they saw one of those stones, they go, oh, there's Christians here, and they encountered some Christians there, but in any case, somehow, they encountered brothers in Christ, in Rome, which is, or in Puteoli there. And it says that they were invited to stay with them for how long? 7 days. Come stay with us for 7 days. We'll put you up. And then it says, and so we came to Rome. You have to note, though, that at this point, they're in Puteoli, they're more than 50 miles away from Rome at this point, because the Forum of Appius is like 40 miles away. The Three Taverns area is like 30 miles away. And so they've still got a ways to go, but it's kind of a summary statement, and this is how we got to Rome, with being accompanied by the brothers. And it says the brothers there, when they heard about us, so apparently the word's getting out, Paul has arrived. What did the brothers in Rome do? They all piled in the minivan and did what? They went out to meet him. They came all the way, so they were excited about seeing Paul. And given that distance to the Forum of Appius and Three Taverns being 30, 40 miles, that's a pretty good journey for them to come meet him. They were excited about seeing him. And they came that distance. They met him there. What impact did this have on Paul? You know, it just had to, right? He's come all this distance, faced all these struggles, and gone through the terrible shipwreck, know that he's about to appear before Caesar himself. God has told him that he's going to appear before Caesar. I can't imagine the weight of all that, what he would have been feeling. And to have brothers or sisters in Christ come up and encourage him just had to be a huge relief. So, question, application. Do leaders ever need encouragement? Yeah, they do. Sometimes just because of what they carry, right? And I think Paul here is an example of that. Paul frequently asked for prayers. People encouraged Paul. He was kind of open that way. And I think there's a good example for us there today. So these folks really encouraged him because of what he was about to face. Verse 16, they came into Rome. We saw that roadway. I don't know, this just looked beautiful to me. All those trees and that Appian Way road as they come into Rome. They arrive. What do we learn about Paul's accommodations from this passage? He was allowed to stay by himself. Dr. Manor in the video, which I guess we'll get to show next week, I hope. You may get 3 videos next week because there's one more that's kind of an epilogue to all this. One of the things he shares is a structure that is similar to the type of structures that Paul may have stayed in. I'll confess, I'm a little bit confused about that because some people talk about him staying in Mamertine prison. That is apparently where he may have stayed later because there's some evidence that Paul stayed for 2 years and was released and wasn't killed during this particular imprisonment, but he was able to do some of the other things that he wanted to do and traveled some after that, and Dr. Manor addresses that. But apparently at this time, where he's staying is some more casual and not quite so prison-like accommodations. And we'll see some more about that as we get into the last part of 28. Who's with Paul while he's in these accommodations? So I'm guessing it's Julius, right? It says with the soldier who guarded him, and it seems to be Julius that's the one that's closest to him as he's guarding him through all this. So it's interesting kind of what's going on as this unfolds and the influence that Paul has. And that influence doesn't stop. as we get into the last part of 28. We'll see how Paul continues to interact with people, even in his difficult circumstances. Many years ago, when Ruth and I were in Dallas, the preacher there, excuse me, Mike Peters, shared a really interesting lesson on the Great Commission. And his point was that the Great Commission is more about, as you go into the world, take Jesus with you wherever you happen to be. It's not so much like sometimes we interpret it, let's get, and I'm certainly not against missionaries, but it's not just about paid missionaries, right? It's not just about the people that we send and support in France, in Africa, in different places around the world. It's not just that. It's every Christian, right? If we go back to John 17, when Jesus is praying his high priestly prayer, he's saying, I'm sending them into the world. We are a sent people. We are sent into the world, and we're to take Jesus with us every place that we go. When we go across the street to visit a neighbor, we should be taking Jesus with us. When we go shopping, we take Jesus with us. He's a part of our life. He lives in us, and people should see that in us. And as we go, we take him. People see that, and they want to be a part of that, and it creates interest. And we see Paul living like this, and as he encounters people in Rome, he just continues to share the gospel, the story of Jesus, with everybody he encounters. So we'll probably finish up 28 and in the book of Acts next week. Thank you all for your comments.